Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for spending the afternoon and evening with us. My name is Jenna Moe. I am the Senior Director of the Aspen Society, which is the philanthropic community of the Aspen Institute, a group of people who care deeply for advancing all of the work of the Aspen Institute to drive change through leadership and dialogue, and build community with others who care for civil discourse on critical issues facing society. So thank you to our members in the room, and thank you to members of the public who have come to learn and engage with us today. It's a special opportunity to celebrate our president and CEO, Dan Porterfield, and his new book, Mindset Matters: The Power of College to Activate Lifelong Growth. And we have a wonderful panel of experts and friends of the Institute to help us explore this topic further. I'd like to extend special thanks to Susan and John Klein for underwriting the Klein book series. It means a lot to us, and it's a wonderful opportunity to gather, so thank you all. I'd also like to thank my colleague Diamond Powell, who is our East Associate for the Aspen Society, and if you haven't met her, please get to know her. She'd love to get you involved. So it's my pleasure to introduce Josh Wyner, who's going to moderate the panel tonight. He is the founder and executive director of the College Excellence Program at the Aspen Institute and is an expert on the topic, and the stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So can you all hear me? Yes. Great. So I'm delighted to be here to celebrate Dan's book, Mindset Matters, and to really use the book as a jumping off point for a conversation about the meaning of higher education, where we are in higher education as a country. I run the higher ed program, the main higher ed program here. There are others, I see Maureen in the back, and others that touch on higher ed in different ways. But the goal of our program is to help the 4,000 to 6,000 colleges, depending on how you count, we can talk about that later, improve student success. And the goals of improving student success are to make sure that we can develop the talent that's needed in our society, for our economy, for our democracy, for the arts, for all of the endeavors, and to enable economic mobility. So we really focus on supporting colleges and leaders in advancing student success for the purposes of mobility and talent. And it's really through that work that I got to know Dan first. I remember Dan called me up and we had a lunch, and he had on the back of an envelope exactly how he was going to increase socioeconomic diversity at Franklin and Marshall College.
I remember it well.
Yeah, and it was through that we approached the Bloomberg Philanthropies, and the American Talent Initiative was created, which is one of our projects. And the goal of that project is to increase the number of lower income students at the colleges in the country that have the highest levels of graduation, including the Ivies and state flagships. It's through the American Talent Initiative that I've gotten to know President Pines of University of Maryland College Park, and have really gotten to know the exceptional leadership on a lot of fronts of his work. And then finally joining us in conversation today is Markera Jones, whose inspiring story was featured in Dan's book. For those who didn't make it to page 278, you will know. And I think in our warm-up call, Markera said, "Why was I last?" And Dan said, "You're the closer. You're the closer."
One little hint though. It's now Dr. Markera.
That's right. Yes. Thank you for reading ahead, Dan. Markera recently earned her PhD in clinical psychology, a field in which he's now practicing in Washington, D.C. So Dan, I'd like to start with you. Really the inspiration behind the book. Can you share what inspired you to write this book and how it's connected to how higher education has made a difference in your life?
Oh, thank you. So first, to everybody who's here, thank you so much to the Kleins for hosting this series. John served as the president of Randolph College, so you know these issues and opportunities inside and have made such an impact on students in your life. Also, Alma Gildenhorn is here, and Alma, thank you so much for your support of both the University of Maryland and the Aspen Institute. She's looking here proudly at the two of us.
We're her two children.
We're her two children, exactly. Obedient ones.
That's correct.
And then we have in this audience all kinds of Aspen colleagues, friends of the Aspen Institute, supporters of the Aspen Institute, members of the College Excellence Program, my family, close friends. I owe so much of the great experiences I've had in life to my wife, Karen, to my children, Caroline and Lizzie, Sarah as well, who's in college right now. And so it's really a special Aspen moment. So thank you. So I forgot your question now. I'm so overwhelmed by who's here, but it was something like, what inspired me to write this book?
Yeah, and how it connects to the meaning of higher ed in your life.
Okay, so what inspired me to write the book, I hope, is something that's inside of each of you. This desire you have, having witnessed something powerful and important that you believe in, to say, I just got to tell that story. That was really the inspiration of the book. And so it was Markera times 1,000. All these students that I've worked with before Franklin and Marshall at Georgetown, but then very closely at Franklin and Marshall, 3 more of whom are in the audience. And the eminence of those individual journeys of learning to tap what's great inside of them, and to do that in a way that allows them to go forward confidently, believing and knowing, because they've cultivated their own talent, that they can make a mark in the world. I wanted to tell those stories. I had to figure out the argument within which those stories would fit, but those stories are what, as Karen knows, would like keep me thinking at night, what more can we do? Or encourage me to drive up and down the East Coast with Christian Hartranft at F&M, asking investors to donate to financial aid at Franklin and Marshall, or making me sort of like want to get better at my work as a mentor, was the power of eminent individual stories. So that was just another way of honoring it. Darryll, you go to work every day honoring that. Now Markera, you honor that in the work you do as a psychologist. But that was the main thing. So then it's like to reverse engineer, is there an argument in here, or is it just like the greatest stories that I ever knew? And that would have been a good book, The Greatest Stories I Ever Knew, and you would have learned the same stories would have been told. Carolina Giraldo, an immigrant from Colombia who created an incredible education for herself. Or Morgan Kincaid, who was so shy she couldn't even talk to professors when she first got to F&M and was the valedictorian by the end. Or Eddie Alsina, who went to F&M because he wanted to be a doctor because his dad had cancer, and during the course of his studies he learned how to do research and got so turned on by research that he realized his goal was to create knowledge as well as to work with patients and clients. And each of these stories, which I wanted to tell so much, they just yearned for the overarching framework. And so after a while, talking to Markera, talking to someone named Sheldon, and to Akbar, who were in the final chapter on Becoming, talking with Christian, who's worked with me, I finally saw the figure in the carpet. But it started with the people. The story was, though, that each of these students that I knew, hundreds of them, had activated within themselves this belief that they could lead their learning. That activating with that single idea, however that then applies, is the stuff of education. Because when a young person interacts with other young people and older people in a setting that's about fostering discovery and creating and collaborating, and they come away with the belief that they can drive their development, whatever comes down the road, opportunity or challenge, whatever comes down the road, I can drive my development. The magic of that is what I finally was able to see connected all these different stories and made them really one story. And the beauty of that one story is that this is something America has always been great at, providing college opportunity, opening the doors ever wider, investing in young people, and in the belief that each person can be the author of their life with the right amount of preparation and support and encouragement and a little bit of a hands-off attitude, not to do it for them, but to do it with them. So that ended up being the theme, which then is quite convenient right now because there's about 17 books a month being written about how bad college is. And it turns out there's nobody writing books about how good college is. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but there's a reason people said don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. This is powerful experience that I think we all know, but I've been able to capture by listening to students. And it sort of puts in perspective other arguments, like college is just a woke brainwashing factory, or college is just a place where they pay for the party. No. College is a place where the status quo gets reinforced. It's just about keeping people down. All these arguments are out there, but then the central truth still, if you've presided at graduations as John has, if you know people personally as Darryll does, if you work with faculty who give their lives to help students grow, the central truth is that people create their futures with college opportunity. And so as we deal with the problems and the counter arguments, let's not forget the main story. So that's what happened.
Thank you. And we'll talk about this a little later. You make a really compelling case that there's not a lot of space between that idea of self-directed learning and actualization and what makes you effective in the labor markets. That these 5 mindsets you describe are the things that both enable you to be a learner and to be effective in your career, in the labor markets, in very practical domains of life.
All right, so one more thing, and then
Please.
you got to talk to Markera and Darryll. So next time you're at a party and somebody says college is no good, we should get rid of college. And people do say that. They say we should get rid of college. Yeah. Say back, college at its best is more relevant and more important and more empowering today than it was 25 years ago. Why is that? Because we exist in a knowledge economy with a rate of change that is exponentially quickening year after year with the invention of artificial intelligence and other breakthroughs in science and technology. Every job is changing and changing fast. The world is changing fast. People that can adapt to change, that can drive their own learning, that can discover, that can create, that can work with others, that can get and give mentoring, those people are advantaged in a rapidly changing economy, and this economy is not slowing down. That can't happen. So in order to keep up, what is the best thing to do in the face of using AI for good? Develop HI, develop human intelligence, invest in what it takes to have human beings be able to live active, self-driven lives, and that requires education.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. We'll turn to you, Markera. We learn about your story in Dan's book, again, starting on 278, Markera. A pathway from Coatesville High to Franklin and Marshall College to a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Illinois. Love to hear a little bit about your journey and the role that higher ed played. So we're going from the macro here to the individual story. The role that higher ed played in your activation and your self-directed talent development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much. So, higher education. My introduction to college and the opportunity to go to college started in high school when I was confronted with the opportunity to do Upward Bound. It's a trio Upward Bound federally funded program for low-income, minority, underserved communities, really underserved students. And at first I was like, well, I was doing very well in school and no one else in my family had gone to college. It wasn't actually something that was talked about or expected, I don't think. And so I just was very nonchalant about it at first. I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this program. I would have to go over the summer to summer school. And but it was very powerful, I think, for me to see that I have some peers who would also be doing this program. And the program was held in the summer for about 12 weeks at Lincoln University, which is the country's first HBCU. And it was to my surprise, I actually went and I found, there are other people who enjoy, people that look like me who also enjoy learning, who are very smart, and I could be a professor. I could see myself reflected in higher education for the first time as I was learning about higher education. So I think that programs like that give you those opportunities to expand and see possibilities, especially to be around other like-minded and people from a similar background than you was very, very helpful and transformational for me. And so I definitely was immediately college me, please. I want to go. I want to learn. It seemed like there was a lot of freedom in that. And so once I got into college, and I was then presented with more opportunity to be curious about my interests and my values, and I had all types of, I was surrounded by all types of different types of people and perspectives. I was taking psychology, so I was already being exposed to things in sociology and things like this, but going to a liberal arts school actually really opened up a lot of space for me as well to grow and learn about myself that I don't know if would be possible if I didn't go to a liberal arts college. I really got to, as Dan has been saying over and over, really create my own journey, right? I like experimented with different types of classes. I had the space to do that. And ultimately, I was able to say, hey, I really enjoy mentoring, right? I really enjoy kind of helping and teaching, and these are the things I like about psychology. And so I think the role that higher education played in my life was really just helping me to come into myself and like explore like what is it that I value? What is it that I can be guided by? And also how can I kind of create the life that I want in a way that's also going to help me give back in the way that made sense to me. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I love how she said, as Dan's been saying, over and over again.
Over
I heard, yeah. Sounds like something that might be said at home, too. Something I just want to call out and ask you about. We had at F&M a talent strategy, we called it, through which we tripled need-based financial aid and tripled enrollment of first-gen students, which then meant we tripled everything. Rural students, urban students, immigrant students, African-American students, everything tripled, including student engagement tripled, because there's so much talent out there. Half the country is eligible for a Pell Grant, for example. And Markera, you were part of the talent strategy, which was also about creating the environment where the talent could flourish, supporting one another and being prominent in our pride in who was in our student body and where it could go. And something I want to ask you about, all these first-gen college students that I've known over my career, and certainly at F&M, we really loaded up. I still haven't met one that doesn't want to give back. Not one yet. It's like 1,000 yes and not zero no, I don't want to give back, I just want to take. What do you think it is about people that have create and are also provided with college opportunity that leads to that desire to pay it forward?
I think that's a good question. I really think it just comes from that experience of having solid mentorship and also like having, again, like I remember when I was a Next Gen Initiative, what do you call that, intern? I don't know. I was mentoring first years, and I think that there's something about being kind of side by side with the students, and kind of you are sharing these experiences with them. You are, it's like this horizontal. Horizontal, not leadership, but yeah, horizontal leadership. You are like hand in hand with this person, and it doesn't feel like there's this air of this is what you need to do and this is how you do it, right? It's very free and it's very nurturing, like kind of like a nurturing kind of mentorship. I think that once you experience that as a mentee, you learn, I can see myself in you, like I can do this too, and it also feels good to receive it, so you kind of want to kind of replicate that moving forward. And so I can speak for myself, like that's definitely how I experienced it. I was just like, I want to provide this opportunity for other people after me, because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that myself. Yeah.
Thank you. Darryll, let's bring you into the conversation.
Sure.
So I'm not sure there are a lot of other college presidents that have aerospace engineer on their resume. Would love to hear about your sort of pathway to a university presidency through aerospace engineering. But really what role higher ed played for you personally, and then what inspired you to bring that to a leadership role at a Research One university, University of Maryland.
So first of all, Dan, congratulations on your book, Mindset Matters, and for telling these stories. And thank you to the Kleins for supporting this book project, and of course to the wonderful Alma Gunderhorn. Thank you for all your leadership in supporting Dan and the Aspen Institute. So, my story is akin to Markera's. My mother had a 10th grade education, never went to college, didn't even complete high school. She was an immigrant from England. Married my father, who was an American serviceman. Back in the 50s and early 60s, there were many bases around Europe. My father happened to be in the Air Force enlistee and was based outside of Liverpool, England, where he met my mother. They immigrated to California, and this is where they started a family. We grew up in the poorest area of a city called Oakland, California. And we were all first generation, my siblings and I, going to college. So a person once said, education is a great equalizer. It is absolutely true for my family. You know, my provost is here, Jennifer King. Wave your hand, Jennifer. That's our provost, Jennifer King Rice. She does a great job. And I think, you know, we see our job as investing in the democracy of opportunity for everyone in the state of Maryland, very akin to investing in human intelligence. So my pathway started with, I'll try to keep it very short. As a kid, you know, I loved riding my bike to the Oakland airport, and I never understood how airplanes took off, how these large things could lift off the ground, right? And this is my mindset. This is how my mindset matters. It was my mindset at the time, and I would just go there and, you know, just look at these planes. I'm like, how is that happening? Look at birds. I love to watch things that fly. I just love to watch things that fly. And then one day while I'm at the airport, an African-American guy comes up to me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just watching the planes. You know, I'm 13 years old." He said, why don't you come over here and let me talk to you? And it turns out it was a gentleman by the name of Charles Drummond, a Tuskegee Airman, of all people, right? I'm just telling you, this is a true story. He says, "Hey, you want to learn how to fly?" I said, "Well, I'm not necessarily interested in learning how to fly. I want to know how these planes take off. That's actually what I care about. What causes that? What are the..." Yeah, I didn't even know the word physics. How does that happen? Anyway, that was my love for the subject. That's where it derived from. And then, you know, again, keeping the story short, my parents didn't have a college education, but my mother knew the value of education. And my mother, and this goes to my colleague over here, Jennifer, my mother goes to the school system of the Berkeley Unified School System because in the neighborhood that I grew up in, East Oakland, we were going to go to a high school that didn't have college placement courses. And my mother, who didn't have college education, knew that college placement, advanced placement courses, College Board were really important at that time, 1970s, 1980s. And she ends up getting on the bus, going to the superintendent of the school system for Berkeley Unified School District, and negotiated that we could live in Oakland and go to Berkeley High School, the same high school you went to, because they had AP courses for my brother and I. I have a identical twin brother. We both are engineers. My mother did that with no college education and went to the board and actually made a case, and they let us in. If that doesn't happen, I'm not the president of the University of Maryland. I'm not even an engineer. And I got a great education at Berkeley High School. I don't know if you knew this. In 1980s, early 80s, Berkeley High School in the state of California was the #1 high school in academics. I didn't know that. My mother knew that, but I didn't know that. And so I ended up getting on this trajectory. So no one in this room, or nobody in the world, could ever tell me the power of education, the power of a story like Markera and my own story and Dan's story, and the stories that Dan is telling about. Because if people don't take an interest and give you an opportunity, if my mother didn't do that, and my brother and I didn't go to Berkeley High School, I don't go to UC Berkeley. And I didn't even know UC Berkeley was one of the best universities in the world. It was just my local school. I just thought, oh, I'll just go to this school, I'll apply to this school. And when I got in, they're like, "Do you know what school you're at?" I said, "No, I'm just at UC Berkeley." And they're like, "This is like one of the #1 public school in the nation." I didn't even know what that meant. But when I went there, once I got there, I did. And just the power of an education can take a person like me and my family, which was fully blue collar. My father worked in the shipyards of Oakland, the Oakland Naval Supply Center. And my mother worked in factories in Oakland and Berkeley, and allow us to get an education. And my brother and my sister do all kind of incredible things. My sister's the most wealthiest of us all. She does movies in the entertainment world. And, but we all started from that same opportunity. And then, let me tell you what lucky, and I'll conclude in a second, Josh, and he's gonna go on forever. So I go to UC Berkeley, I'm a freshman in mechanical engineering. And my academic advisor, the person who signs my record so I can take these courses and proves it, is a gentleman by the name of Dan Moat. See Dan Moat, you know who that is, right? Exactly. Dan Moat was the president, 2 presidents ahead of me at University of Maryland. But he's my simple academic advisor, and he takes a liking to me, right? There's 50 students he has to write, sign off on. I go in his office every day, every time semester, and then one day he says to me, "Hey, why don't you come in my lab?" Now I'm a sophomore. I go in his lab, and he shows me research. I didn't know what research was. shows me research. You know, I was doing well. I was getting all A's. He said, I'm going to introduce, I'm going to be a mentor. I didn't know he was being a mentor to me. I didn't even know what a mentee was. But he was actually teaching me about research. And long story short, that got me on a trajectory to get a PhD like Markera at MIT and to become an aerospace engineer and figure out how these planes fly. And now design these planes and work at, and you know, I've designed satellites that have gone to the moon, novel UAVs that have never been built before, and to live my dream and my journey by someone like Charles Drummond pulling me aside and said, hey, are you interested in aerospace engineering? That's the field you need to go into. And then Dan Mote saying, hey, let me introduce you into research. So this experience in these journeys and the power of the transformative experience of an education, no one could ever tell me and my family that it doesn't matter, and that it doesn't matter today, because Provost Rice and I see it every day, just like Dan saw it every day at Franklin and Marshall, and we see these stories all the time, every day, and they help our country. Not just help themselves, they help our country, and that's why higher education matters.
Thank you. I'd love to, thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to come forward. Now you're a university president, and I think such inspiring stories that are happening every day in unseen ways and are never reported in the newspapers, right? When you're reading the headlines about all the problems on college campuses or whatever the divisive issues are, we're not reporting on those. But as a university president, how does that experience inform your work to try to make systematic those kinds of opportunities so that we make sure that the talent from every corner of Maryland and beyond, because you have a national reputation, gets developed? How does it inform your work?
So we feel together, I do this in partnership. This is why I always say, I love the fact, I didn't know you were gonna, I actually didn't know you were gonna be here, Jennifer. And so Jennifer is incredible, and we work in partnership, and we feel our job is to find those talent whatever zip code they're in. And let me just say this, and I was telling this to Mr. Klein when we were talking for a little bit. This is truly true, right? So in America, in the world, where else can you find this to happen? It doesn't happen anywhere, but it only happens at a university. So you go to a university, and literally everyone from every zip code, if you're a big university like mine, is there from the United States, number one. Number two, they're from the world. We have 186 countries represented at the University of Maryland, College Park. All 50 states, every county of the state of Maryland, the city of Baltimore. Where else does that happen, that you come in at age 18, 19, 20, and I'm sitting next to someone from the Middle East and someone from Germany, right? That happens only at a university. And let me tell you why that matters and why it matters to the United States. So I'm gonna give you a couple of names, a couple of simple examples that you all are gonna know what these names I'm talking about. And all of this has a relationship between immigration, education, economic security, and national security. So let me give you a couple examples. Sergey Brin, co-founder of Google, University of Maryland alum, computer science and mathematics. What did he co-found? Google. Guess how he got here? His parents were Russian immigrants. His father was a math professor at University of Maryland. They lived in College Park, of all places. His son was so smart, he didn't know what to do with him. He brought him to College Park, and he got college classes in his last 2 years as a high school student. That's why Sergey Brin was so great. He did his algorithms while he was at College Park. He went to Stanford, never finished his PhD, but starts one of the largest firms in the history of the United States. And why does that matter? Why does immigration matter? Because it leads to education, opportunity, and economic security and development. It's one example. Here's another example. Jeff Bezos, Cuban immigrant to Princeton, got his undergraduate degree at Princeton, figured out the idea while he was at Princeton. Not in Cuba, at Princeton. What did he form? Amazon, one of the largest firms in the history of the world, not just the United States, employs hundreds of thousands of people. Economic security. Why? Because of the innovation ecosystem of the United States, the educational opportunities of a school like Princeton, and because of the immigration system that allows them to get an F1 visa and come to the United States to get an education, all undergraduate. I'm not even talking about the graduate part. Now let's talk about the graduate part. Pick another friend you might know, Elon Musk. South African born, engineer. I met him in 2001. I invited him as the chair of aerospace engineering to give a talk about SpaceX. He was a nice person. He was a smart person. He was a very engaging person. The person that we see today is a totally different person. The person I saw in 2001, I invited him to give one of our distinguished lectures, was an engineering genius, an aerospace engineering genius. He said at that time, this was when SpaceX, nobody knew about SpaceX. We in engineering knew about it. And he came in and we laughed at him, behind the scenes, of course, not in front of him. We said, that's never going to work. We know the aerospace community, and you're never going to be able to build this. But he comes to the United States as a South African immigrant first he came to Canada, got a degree in Canada, then he went to Stanford, never finished his degree at Stanford, starts PayPal in Palo Alto, makes $1 billion, then starts SpaceX. Changes the whole aerospace industry. Now, guess who's standing? His firm is the only one standing. You know, there's the Boeings, there's the Lockheed, no offense for the Boeing, Lockheed Martin people right in the room. But now SpaceX is the only launch vehicle that we depend for human transport into space. Why? Immigration, education, opportunity, innovation ecosystem in the United States. This is why immigration, education, opportunity, innovation leads to economic security and national security. This is why higher education matters. I just gave you 3 simple examples. I could give you 20 examples. It's all because of what we do in higher education, and it is still the #1 educational institutions in the world are in the United States.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So please.
I have a part. I want to complement that part with something that I think is of equal value, and the way you expressed it, Darryll, was brilliant. For the moment, let me just say that it expresses something that's instrumental, critical to our society. Complementing that is something that's intrinsic and inherent, and it's the combination of the inherent and the instrumental that I love, because you can talk about the transformational power of an individual being able to come into possession of their identity and their future, and know who they are, and know what they value, and know that they can adapt and grow continuously. And there's a part that is informed by the fact I was educated by Jesuits, who saw their mission, in part, as, in their words, saving souls, and also helping society. And it's this both and that we're able to invest in the eminence of individual flourishing and foster societal flourishing. And I've never heard it done so well at the societal flourishing level the way you just did it. And I hope we can not totally seed the ground of the individual flourishing, because it's at the individual level, the Markera Jones finding herself through learning, that we become not just a prosperous and successful society, but a society full of people who feel whole. And that's so needed too in this world today.
Absolutely. I mean, can I just share one more story that it connects to your point? So again, take a person like me. I grew up in the poorest neighborhood of East Oakland, California. I go to engineering. I'm sitting next to a colleague of mine who happens to be a fellow student, who her name happens to be Karen. We work on our mechanical engineering homeworks together for 3 or 4 years. We get to the Honor Society's senior year event, and she says, oh, my father's an engineer, and he's going to give the keynote talk. The person I've been sitting next to comes from the wealthiest neighborhood of the Bay Area. I had never known, she never told me that. Her father was Andy Grove, CEO and president of Intel. So for 3 years, me and my little 3 friends all didn't know that Karen's father was the president and CEO. Who could have got us some internships, first of all, that's what we were upset about. But this is the power of a university. A person like me can sit next to the person like this, and till this day, we are best of friends. She runs the Andy Grove Foundation. I've reviewed proposals for her. I mean, this is the power of this individual stories and the societal good that it builds between folks who come from haves and have-nots, and they can be in fellowship together to study and learn and advance society. And that is powerful. and it only happens at a university.
Thank you. So, notwithstanding the power of higher ed, and by the way, data just came out of Georgetown Center for Education and the Workforce, and it shows that the vast majority of good jobs are aligned with getting a bachelor's degree in our country, and you hear a lot of discussions about how people will no longer require a bachelor's degree, right? We're not going to require degrees, but hiring practices have not changed. So all the projections are for the power of higher ed to become greater relative to good jobs, jobs that pay a decent wage. And we can have a long conversation along with Maureen about what a good job means. She's done great work on that front. But yet, there's increasing distrust. It's a decade-long pattern of distrust in higher education. And in some parts of the country, we're actually seeing, and in some sectors, we're seeing a softening of enrollments in higher ed. And so there's this disparity between the realities of what higher ed can do for the individual, can do for our country, can do for the economy, and the trust in higher ed. And so I'm curious to hear from any of you, what's going on there and what can we do about it? Because if, in fact, as we all believe, higher ed is powerfully connected to individual flourishing and societal good, and there's growing distrust, we got a problem. So what's going on, and is there anything that we can do about it? Dan, do you want to start?
I'll at least lead us off. I think people in the audience may have ideas, and we can have some discussion. But I think that the combination of the cost feeling out of reach, to some extent, at some institutions, the barrier to entry being extremely high, and people feeling that, how can you get in? The pressure that we see in some communities, students feel to get themselves marketed so they can get in, and all the frustration and anxiety that comes from that and doesn't serve any real developmental purpose for 18-year-olds or 16-year-olds are part of it. And I think that if we could address the cost question seriously, while also college by college, type of college by type of college, double down on making sure that the value is really good, really clear value propositions. Different types of schools, so different offerings. Those two things, deal with the cost and improve the value proposition, would make progress. But I don't know, Markera, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think I was definitely right there with you about the cost, right? I think that one huge argument that I hear, or a huge complaint, even when I was in college and I was thinking about college in my community, when I would go back and I would work for the summer or whatever, and then people would be like, well, why are you in college, right? It's probably going to be a waste of your time and your money, right? You're spending all this money, you're going to be in so much debt, how are you going to get out of that? And then when you get out, now, yes, a lot of places are requiring a bachelor's degree. However, even it still feels like it's way undervalued too. So I think that there's this tension of, okay, there's real cost issues and real debt issues that come with pursuing a college degree, and for someone families who are already in debt, right? Families who are already trying to build wealth, right? Trying to get themselves out of a place, get opportunity. It feels like for a lot of people that is a step back. And then there's the issue of once you do get a bachelor's degree or whatever kind of degree, you go and you're still not getting, paid the wage that you feel like is fair, that you should have earned by that time. So I think that is a huge issue. And then I guess internal to this other argument about the value of college, I think that sometimes when students go into the learning environment of whatever college they choose, they find that, okay, in theory, and what they were saying this was going to be it sounded really good, right? I felt like I was going to go in and learn certain things, or it was going to be a certain type of school and work environment. And then when they get there, they're not actually practicing what they preach. And there's all types of issues, whether it's diversity and equity issues and inclusivity issues, how universities are actually handling student level, individual level issues. can really be a tough thing to navigate as well, especially for people who are first-generation college students. And so I think that all of those are should be considered.
Thank you, Markera.
Yeah.
Darryll?
I would echo those thoughts. Just say broadly, so we were just at an American Public Land Grant University meeting, and this message of obviously the public's opinion of higher education we've known has been decreasing for the last almost 2 decades. But what has changed, which is really good, is the debt situation for students who graduate has been going down for the last 4 consecutive years. And it's down to its lowest point, at least in the last 4 consecutive, number one. Number two, the cost of attendance, this is across the entire enterprise, is going down. So we're hearing the chatter about it's too expensive, it's not affordable. Your program, Dan, the Aspen's program on the American Talent Institute, is causing us, as one of the land grant institutes, as a partner with you, to work on the lowest quintile of financial need. And in our institution, Provost Rice has led a terrapin commitment that now allows us to be at 21% of total Pell students at University of Maryland. And just a few years ago, we were only at 16%. And that's because of this program that you created to help the lowest quintile of financial need. If they get into our institution, then now they get the monies to be successful. They don't come out with debt. And so, first of all, ATI should be commended for their leadership in this, and the Bloomberg Philanthropies for supporting it. So we are listening now. I think higher education leaders and higher education in general was not listening to these negative comments about the cost and the affordability and the accessibility, but we're listening. We're creating pathways with you through transfer programs, which will help reduce the cost and allow folks to graduate. The other things I just want to share with you is that higher education is now working on these more important, higher ideal issues, like how do we really affect society in a positive way. So at our institution, Provost Rice has worked on a strategic plan that is entitled, because we're the fear of the turtle, Fearlessly Forward is our strategic plan. And let me just highlight a few things. One pillar that is in our plan is that we will work on societal's grand challenges. And I want to just highlight one of them. She's a dean, used to be a dean of a college of education. And I don't know, in the United States, I don't know if you know this fact, in most of the states of the United States, children at the 3rd and 4th grade level do not read at a 3rd and 4th grade level. 15–20% of the students in the state of Maryland don't read at a 3rd or 4th grade level of literacy. So one of our grand challenges is led by the College of Education, 4 of the colleges involved, plus Morgan State University, is to teach new teachers new mechanisms, new methods for how to enhance literacy in young children. Because if you can't read, you can't learn. And so that initiative will help reduce this deficit maybe to 10% over the next decade. But that's focusing our talented faculty to pivot and to work on this grand challenge, not just another journal paper, but something that's going to translate into practice. So she's been leading that effort, and we are listening, higher education is listening to providing that value to the rest of society.
Thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out Tanya LaViolet, raise your hand, and Ben Fresquez. If you want to learn more about the American Talents Initiative, these are the leaders who are in the trenches doing that work. We've got others on the team as well. Thank you for all you're doing. So I just want to close out, Dan, by noting that in August, Aspen received a $185 million historic gift from Bezos. And as I was reading your book on Mindset Matters, and I've known Kaya Henderson for a long time, and just it's such a delight. Is Kaya here with us? I don't know. She wasn't able to come today, but such a delight to be able to bring her here to be thinking about rising generations. And I hear this idea of leadership in the Aspen goals and in what we do, and that's the idea of affecting the mindset of young people is part of the way she's thinking about the work. Yeah. So I'd love to hear from you just anything about this gift and how it connects to what you've written about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Some who are here are working very hard on this idea that the Aspen Institute, which has 75 years of really great service to our country and the world in a wide variety of ways, from leadership development to practical problem solving to building bridges and dialogues that create community and build social cohesion, that could we, as an organization that's been really excellent in those spaces, apply that focus with intensity across our work to include young people in everything we do. We do have a number of programs right now that serve young people. One looks at students who are out of work and out of school, very successful program. Another looks at families and how families, parents, and children together should be considered and supported in our school systems or by employers or in our public health or public welfare. Another focuses on Native American youth. We have good programming. There's like 5 or 10 more I could list. But what about thinking of the Institute as a whole, as a community that cares about the future of the country and the future of the world and expresses that care by doing what we're good at with people at an earlier stage of their lives. And so Mike and Jackie Bezos, they're the parents of Jeff Bezos, made an endowment gift of $175 million to allow us to create a center on rising generations at the Institute. So in perpetuity, forever, 100 years from now, there will be a focus, big one, on including youth and young adults. Pete Weber is here, and he's the vice president who, with Kaya, is building the center. We've done a lot of listening early out in the world with young people and institutions and organizations that serve them. Our vision is that civil dialogue, civic engagement, getting involved in your community, developing your leadership, equipping yourself, that should be a predictable part of growing up in our country for all young people, and to the extent we can in other communities around the world. Maria Osabal was here. She's our Executive Vice President of Strategic Development. She played a big role in working with Kaya, the Bezoses, Pete, our board chair, Margot Pritzker, to develop this concept. So if we succeed, it won't be because we did it alone, but because we partner with employers, with schools, with the military, with communities, with religious organizations, with other civil society institutions, and together all of us say, let's make it so all young people have a chance to participate early and often in creating their lives and in supporting their community. And this is what's beautiful about this from our perspective, is this isn't a new body of work for the Aspen Institute. It's what we do. It's just doing it with intensity at an earlier age. And so one of our hopes is that all these different great policy projects that we create will involve younger people also at the table. And that when we're working with school systems and they're wondering, how do we build youth advisory committees? We have a game plan. We can show them, here's how you do it. And perhaps when we're working with people doing national service in say, Teach for America or the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, we can offer leadership opportunities for those young people while they're working so they can also lift the head up from the work to synthesize it and think about what they're going to do next. This is work to do together. So if you have ideas about this, we're at the earliest stage. Pete is right there. Will you mind raising your hand? Pete is right here. If you've got an idea for what Aspen can and should do to put power in the hands of young people, we are going to make a mark, we believe. And thank you for asking.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. To you for questions that you may have for the panelists. Diamond is here to run the, we have a question up here in the front. Thanks, Diamond.
And I think we're recording this, and so it's one reason why we want to have you in the mic.
Oh, somebody's recording it. Oh my God, now I'm on the record.
We've got millions of people
This
on the
is
internet watching
scary.
this.
This is really scary. This is more a comment than a question. My father had the opportunity to go to college. His family was all immigrant. They did not speak any English. He went to college and university with a whole bunch of guys who were all, I say guys because they were mostly men, were all first generation guys, and they paid zero tuition. And that's how he got through school. His family could not have allowed him really to consider that possibility. He also was an engineer, I should say, civil engineer, and rose to the top level in managing New York City in his day. I had the same opportunity to go to a free of charge university, major public university, New York City, and then went on and got a PhD at another public university at Indiana. My point is then that the society saw that paying for these universities out of public funds, the state of Indiana, the state of New York, the city of New York, made it possible for all of these massive numbers of immigrants, as well as other first-generation students, to have that opportunity. I, of course, was not first-generation since he had done it, but I wish today I could see that kind of public investment so that all of those young people today would come out of school totally debt-free, as I did, as my father had done before me. So that's just a wish, and I don't know what more we can do in lobbying to make this happen, but I think that's a real goal for the whole higher education community. Get the public so it's a public good, not just a private investment.
Can I just speak to that for a moment? The moderator's privilege here. So Dan didn't think we'd get through a whole one of these without my
we knew the
inserting.
privilege would be asserted.
So the place where so many of those students go, not exclusively, I mean, Darryll's doing strong work and Dan did strong work to bring them to their institutions, but you're right, with the rising cost of higher ed, that has exceeded inflation, the sticker price alone drives people away, and the lack of financial aid for many. They're coming to community colleges. A full third to 40% of all undergraduates in our country, 6 to 7 million students, are in community colleges. And the real question for us as a society, back to, Dan, your value question, is how do we ensure that those students can do the workforce credentials that they may be doing, but the majority of them want bachelors. They want to go on to things like your PhD that you got from CUNY, I assume it was one of the CUNY schools? Indiana, but you started at CUNY. So how do they start in the community college and move on? And a huge amount of our work at the College Excellence Program is training the next generation of presidents in community colleges and working in 2- and 4-year schools. This is what Darryll was speaking about earlier, in partnership to ensure that many, many more of those students who start in community college, where the average tuition is $3,000 or $4,000 a year, can move on and get a bachelor's. And right now we have a crisis in our country. And I would suggest that part of the distrust in higher ed is all of those students who start there and never go on and get a bachelor's are in their communities saying this isn't worth it. And they may not be wrong in every case. So I love what you said, and I think if we really want to make a difference on that front, we have to recognize where these students are. And while we're fighting to make sure that we hold the cost of higher ed down, that the public invests in it, let's recognize that we've got millions of students who are aspiring to, and we need to develop the talent of, in community colleges, getting B and A averages and never moving on. My colleague Tanya, there are 12,500 students, last data point, 12,500 students graduate every year from community college with a 3.7 average in programs meant to transfer, and guess where they transfer? Nowhere. That's what Tanya's research shows us. And so the real question for us that we can deal with right now, we know the models that work, is how do we enable them to move forward? It's a big part of the program. One of the other projects, in addition to the American Talent Initiative, is our transfer work, is to work on that.
Articulation.
Yes.
Yes, and even more. And again, we've had great conversations about that. But thank you, terrific, terrific point. Other questions folks may have? Yes?
Hi. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of like zip code destiny. It was one of those sort of new terms brought about. I personally was introduced to it in an NPR podcast, and the concept is basically where you go to kindergarten has a strong correlation. It's a Harvard study. Has a strong correlation with sort of the opportunities you get in life, where you end up, where you graduate from, so on and so forth. I know the hard work that gets done at CEP on a daily basis. I love being part of this team. But I guess my question is, how do you battle the stigma of what zip code destiny entails? How do you sort of inspire entire communities to work against this sort of existing long-term research?
Thoughts?
Markera,
Markera, please. Yeah.
This is a great question. I almost fell into that kind of destiny, right? I think really, I think we need to do a lot more with equipping schools, public school teachers, and kind of making climate at public schools better, reducing bias, a whole lot of training in like cultural competence, and also just like bias training and really, really investing in that because, I mean, it was at my high school where, you know, this was after so Upward Bound took me on a college tour and F&M was on that list. And I was like, I don't really know. I don't really care. This is like too close to home. I don't know if I want to go here. But I went there and I was like, oh, I think I want to go here. And, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here. They might really invest in me in a significant way. And I went back to my high school and told my guidance, this was the meeting that you have with your guidance counselor where they're like, you're telling them about your plans and where you want to go to college. And so before I even opened my mouth to tell him, hey, I saw this school and I want to go to this school, he's like, I'm gonna stop you. Before you start, let me recommend this school to you. And this school, you know, it was Cheney University. It's another HBCU. It's in Westchester, Pennsylvania. It was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes up the road. And it would have been fine, except that, like, my GPA was like 3.9, and I had so much more talent than the kind of opportunities that I would have gotten at Cheney University. So the fact that he just was like, this is what I'm going to recommend to this student without even taking into account the type of person I am, the type of student I am, didn't even want to hear what I was interested in first, right? And so easily, if I didn't have a plan and someone else is like saying, you should go here, I could have taken that. And my whole trajectory would have been different. And so it really comes down to like, there's so many instances of that in my high school and even starting from middle school of like the messages that we're getting from some of our educators and, you know, the leadership. And so I think one of the kind of pathways for me that I'm thinking about is like, again, investing in this kind of level of how do we care for our community? How do we uplift people? How do we not kind of perpetuate inequity, you know, through the way that we're teaching students? Yeah.
Let me compliment that point, and it's just so brilliantly expressed by Markera, that on the receiving end, if you will, on the college end, one way to address zip code destiny is to understand talent in a more holistic way than the most selective colleges tend to understand talent. And so one of the things that we did when we tripled our investment in financial aid at F&M, we also rethought what were the qualities of the student that were predictive of success at Franklin and Marshall. We didn't say, well, let's start with how to get more students with higher SATs, or let's see if we can get them to have more AP classes. Let's have, you know, be even better school if we had them taking an average of 9 in AP classes. We thought, what talent actually is demonstrated by students that thrive at a small school, research intensive, hard school, academically challenging, where we need a lot of people involved that's small. And so we shifted our lens on talent. And we said, I won't go into the detail, but we said, A, curiosity. You're going to take classes that you've never studied in high school. Who's going to find that exciting? B, resilience. It's a hard school. There's setbacks that come with being 18 to 22 anyway, but it's also tough grading. You have to work hard. There's going to be moments of setback. Who's got a record in their life? I don't mean academically, their life of resilience. Third one was opportunity. We offer a lot, and we need people to say yes. Otherwise, it's going to be a quiet campus. Who's got a pattern in their life of saying yes to opportunity, including when they don't have a lot of opportunity? They've said yes to what's there, like an Upward Bound program. And then another one was vision of education. Is that talent? You bet. Who's got a vision that going to college is something they want to sacrifice for? Because they know that's what they need. They may not know what it will lead to, but their aspiration tells them there's something through that door that I want to work for. Those qualities of talent, as far as I've seen, the SAT is not capturing yet. But they're actually predictive of thriving, at least at our school. And so we turned our admission process towards those. And then we found that curiosity, resilience, a vision of education, saying yes to opportunity, were probably overrepresented in low-income students. That the hunger for opportunity, which is a talent for a place that's about delivering opportunity, the hunger was overrepresented. And that was so exciting. That's why we didn't call it a diversity strategy, because it wasn't a diversity strategy, though we became much more diverse. It was a talent strategy, the talent to maximize opportunity. And so I think there's both investing more at the front end in equitable pre-college education and all the things around that, from healthcare to housing, and at the same time, on the other side of it, getting off of our high horses where we think that everything comes down to these indices that are mostly about showing what the school is for its marketing and less about who's going to actually be strong in the school.
Thank you, please. And I think, yes.
No, I just
Please,
want to
Darryll.
echo.
That's
I don't want to steal. Dan is
You-
spot
no,
on.
st-
I just
steal.
want. I want to add value to what you said. So we, as a large public, we do exactly what Franklin and Marshall do. We do holistic application review. We get 60,000 applications for 5,000 slots. And one thing that we found out, Dan, is very similar to the talent and the holistic review. I was the dean of engineering, and we were trying to increase the number of women recruited to engineering. Just as a metric for you, across the United States, in College of Engineering, the typical percentage of women is something like 20% across the United States, okay? So clearly not represented by the population number. So we worked with Purdue University, which also did holistic application review, and they found out there was a correlation to high school students if they were female leaders of societies and organizations in high school, and they were interested in STEM, they succeeded at a 99% rate. So we asked our admissions office, look for the leadership trait in the applicants that applied to College Park. Today, our women numbers are 33%, way above the national average. So just echoing what Dan said, looking at other things that lead to equitable opportunity and opportunity to get an engineering degree that increases your numbers.
Great. I think we had one more question in the back here. How are we on time? Diamond, am I? One last question?
You can do a lightning round, too.
A lightning round.
3 questions and we answer them fast.
Fair enough. So I saw 2 hands up. So if there's a third one, we can certainly have that. Why don't we hear questions, and then whoever would like to answer it quickly, we can get there. Thank you.
All right, lightning round, we got it. A common theme and motif that I've heard is the ways that education offer opportunity. I'm gonna bite the specific phrase of innovation incubation, right? A space for that. We know it's a combination of access to information that higher education provides and the network of people we have access to. The pandemic changed those business models in drastic ways. We pivoted. Technology had to become a more integral part. We've now slowly started to recover from that, but I'm curious, have there been ways that technology and the ways that we leverage technology to foster innovative ecosystems has sustained now that we've moved back to in-person educational settings?
So I can give one example real quickly, lightning round. During the pandemic, the superintendent of schools of Prince George's County, Monica Golson, calls me up. I had just started as president July 1st of 2020, and she says, I need math instructors. I said, I can't send math instructors to COVID-rid schools. And so what we ended up doing, using technology, Zoom, we used our math instructors for pre-calculus and calculus for 10 high schools in Prince George's County with tutorial support online and services all virtually online to help cover a deficit for free to Prince Georgian high schools for these 10 high schools. That hasn't ended. We're still doing it today, thanks to Provost Wright's leadership. And so we leverage something in an emergency that now has become something that I don't think we're ever going to change, right? They like it. Kids are getting dual enrollment credits. We don't even care if they come to College Park. They can go to Franklin Marshall as far as we're concerned. I'm serious, because we're doing a service to the county leveraging technology in the cases of math, just 2 math courses.
I'm going to quickly pick up on that. So some states stopped requiring testing to do dual enrollment. So by the way, for those of you who don't know, dual enrollment is high school students taking college classes.
Yeah.
It's bigger than AP now.
Yeah.
It's bigger than, more students do that than do AP courses. Some states stopped doing testing for that because they couldn't do it during the pandemic. And then they figured out whether their student success rates in dual enrollment went down. They didn't.
Yeah.
And so they hung on to not requiring testing of 10th or 11th graders. They look at grades still, but not requiring testing to figure out if you're college ready to go on to those classes, something that's been hung on to in some states to create greater opportunity for folks. Please, last question. Thanks. Oh, we have two more. One in the front here, and then we'll go to the back. Thank you.
You've talked a lot about student admission. You've talked a lot about students' admission and so forth. I am very sympathetic. I'm just curious, what do you think faculties need to do these days to make the use of the talent they inherit, if you get the right people, more productive than it has been probably in the last 10 years?
So I'll answer it fast, but this book that I wrote is full of stories of how faculty, individually but as a body, at Franklin and Marshall, fostered growth mindsets in students, the belief that they can learn, knew how to learn, and wanted to learn again. That's basically a growth mindset. And I think that there will be three things to say fast. One is build relationships with students. If technology, by the way, enables relationships, I'm for it. If technology impedes relationships, I'm against it. 18 to 22-year-olds need the presence of caring and engaged adults in their lives. So one thing I'd say is faculty to challenge, encourage, reward, whatever it takes so there's more faculty engaging in relationship. Second is I think that sequencing learning so that students know they're learning and know how to take the next step is a pedagogical practice that eventually allows the student to believe they can drive their own learning. And so I'm really partial to challenging educators to build steps into learning so that students know they're learning as they're learning. And the third thing would be for faculty to be present and available as role models to the campus so that there's just more of a norm of a cross-generational community.
Last question. Thank you.
For me, one of the big questions I have is, how do we get students excited about those fields that may not necessarily seem like there's a job right at the end? I graduated with a major in physics and a major in history. And when I decided to pursue history, my family thought I was nuts. Because at least with a physics degree, you could go become an engineer or something like that. But so much of education has been in the humanities and social sciences, and nobody seems to want to value those in the same way. And what can colleges and universities do to emphasize how important it is to take classes that force you to think outside of just the practical reality of what's going to get you a job?
So I'll give two very brief thoughts about that. One is interdisciplinary learning. Problem-based learning is really a key to that. There was a great book written about what can humanities learn what can economics learn from humanities that came out from a college president and professor. So one is, I think we just need problem-based learning, right? To set those challenges and to see how disciplines apply. And that leads to the second point, was we need applied learning. I think one of the biggest challenges, I have a son who is an artist and a great student, and he ended up focusing on computer science because he could create things. But he was a great writer, and I lamented the fact. I kept wanting him to take history and English because he was a great writer and he loved that stuff, but he wanted to create, and when he took those classes at a small liberal arts college, he wasn't applying the learning. It was way too much in his head. And so I think we know that people learn better through applied learning. There are ways of applying history learning and philosophy learning to real political problems, to real historical problems that exist today, and to apply them to real issues, water rights issues, right? How does history play a role in how are we going to save our planet from the water problems we have or deal with water problems out west, right? So I would say that applied learning and project-based learning really can help. And we need institutions that create the incentives and the structures for faculty to do that at scale. not the random acts of excellence we have. There are many faculty who do that.
Yeah.
But we need, and we work a lot with college leaders to help them understand how do we set the conditions, and provosts, how do we set the conditions so that that's happening at scale. But there's brain science and there's plenty of evidence that when that happens, students are more engaged. They learn at a higher rate. And I think we can bring back the humanities, I'm a history major as well, by doing that kind of work. Any?
Yeah, and I
Perfectly
wanted
stated.
to really quick add on that. I was definitely thinking to the applied learning, the project-based learning, right? You know, I majored in psychology, and I double majored in psychology and French, and if you know anything about clinical psych, you know that you can't actually do what you think you want to do with the bachelor's. Like, you kind of leave and you have this understanding that with a psychology degree or something like a sociology degree, you have this broad understanding about people and but then what jobs are you looking for? It's so broad that it can leave someone feeling confused about what to do or where they fit. But when you have an opportunity, whether that's provided by a particular faculty member, or again, something that is like institutionalized at the university, where you can actually go out and like get this hands-on experience, you know, an internship or something you're doing in the community that's in partnership, it really helps you to see, oh, these are the skills that I'm gaining regardless of what the title of my degree is. Like, this is what I'm doing and this is how you do that. So
We happen to have some great professors in the audience. Father Otto Hentz has been teaching theology at Georgetown for about 50 years. Alex Sens remade the classics curriculum of Georgetown so it was more undergraduate and I'd say non-specialist focused. And he's been teaching at Georgetown for about 30 years. And so I do think excellence in teaching is also part of the answer. People that really teach like their hair's on fire, is also part of it.
Love that. Diamond is prepped all the way up here. Thank you, Diamond, for keeping us on task.
Thank you.
And just join me in congratulating you on a terrific book. If you haven't had a chance to read it, please do and get past 278. Keep going. It really is inspirational. It really helps us understand the value of higher ed in our society at a time when there is so much cynicism and rightful questioning about value and cost. Thank you for what is a very powerful antidote to all of that. And join me in thanking the panel for a great conversation.
Thank you, Josh, Dr. Pines, Dr. Markera, and Dan for this talk. Thank you, Susan and John Klein, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate your participation, and safe travels home tonight. There might be some cupcakes out, so please take one on your way out. Thank you.